A hotel maid pushes her cleaning cart past room 230. The corridor is quiet except for the hum of air conditioning. Inside, a man has missed checkout by 19 hours. She knocks. No answer. She uses her master key. The door opens 6 inches before the chain catches. Through the gap, she sees a man on the bed, medicine bottle on the nightstand. Everything peaceful. The coroner will call it natural causes, cardiac arrest, perhaps, or a blood pressure spike. The kind of death that happens in hotel rooms when businessmen travel alone, except then Dubai police pull the security footage. 648 hours of tape, 27 people moving through airports, lobbies and elevators in patterns, too precise to be coincidence. They watch the same 2 men in tennis whites pace the second-floor corridor for an hour. They watch a woman smile into her phone while a door opens behind her. They watch 4 men enter a room across the hall carrying duffel bags, and they realize the chain on that door was latched from inside. The man who died alone in that room was never alone at all. This channel exists to show how power is actually exercised behind the scenes. If that's useful to you, you'll want to be here. Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was born in the Jabalia refugee camp in 1960. The camp was not a temporary shelter. It was a permanent condition. 60,000 people crammed into concrete blocks and corrugated tin, sewage running through open channels, children growing up with the understanding that the world beyond the fence had forgotten them. Mahmoud lifted weights in a makeshift gym built from scrap metal. He learned to fight because fighting was the only currency that mattered. By 19, he had joined the resistance. By 25, he had proven himself valuable enough that Hamas entrusted him with something more important than violence: logistics. He did not fire rockets or plant explosives. He made sure others could. When Israeli armor rolled into Gaza, Hamas fighters had anti-tank rounds waiting because Mahmoud had moved them through Sudan, Egypt, and the tunnel networks beneath Rafah months before the first shell was fired. He was the reason weapons arrived before they were needed, and money appeared before it was asked for. Invisible by design, the men who pull triggers become martyrs. The men who make the triggers arrive become irreplaceable. Israeli intelligence files on him ran to hundreds of pages, intercepted phone calls, surveillance photos, forensic accounting that traced millions through his hands. But knowledge is not access. They knew where he had been. They rarely knew where he was. His red page had been open since 1989. That year, he had participated directly in the kidnapping of 2 Israeli soldiers. Avi Sasportas, 21 years old, grabbed at a hitchhiking station near Ashkelon, shot 3 times. Buried in a grave that had been dug before he was taken. Ilan Saadon, lured into a car by men dressed as Orthodox Jews, killed with a pistol at close range. Mahmoud had posed with both bodies before disposal. The photographs circulated through Israeli intelligence for years afterward, a reminder that some debts do not expire. A red page is not an order, it is a permission, joint authorization from the Prime Minister and Defense Minister that remains active until revoked or executed. Mahmoud had lived under that permission for 20 years. He knew it existed. He had outlived multiple Israeli governments, survived through 2 intifadas, watched colleagues die in targeted strikes while he moved through borders under assumed names. Perhaps he believed his carefulness had made him untouchable. Perhaps he simply grew tired of constant vigilance. In January 2010, he made a decision that would cost him everything. He booked a flight to Dubai without his bodyguards. The security detail could not get seats on his plane. They would arrive the following day, 24 hours, a narrow window. But for the people watching, it was the only window that mattered. The first operatives landed on January 18th, the day before Mahmoud's arrival. By midnight, the city was quietly being colonized. They arrived as tennis players, tourists, and consultants, each a separate cell, each carrying luggage that passed through X-ray machines without incident, all disappearing into the glittering anonymity of a city built to welcome strangers. Nothing about their appearance suggested military training. Nothing about their movements suggested coordination. They checked into hotels on opposite sides of the city, exchanged local currency, and waited. They belonged to Caesarea, the division of Mossad that exists in the space between rumor and classified record. Its members are drawn from Israel's most elite units, commandos selected for additional years of training in surveillance, weapons, languages, and the psychological conditioning required to kill without hesitation and disappear without trace, and they never move until they are certain. Lillehammer had made that doctrine. In 1973, they killed the wrong man in Norway, a Moroccan waiter, not a terrorist. Arrests, reparations, decades of humiliation. Since then, verification came before everything. Caesarea teams had visited Dubai 5 times in the preceding 9 months. February, March, June, mapping hotel security systems, testing electronic door locks, identifying which surveillance cameras had blind spots and which covered every angle. They were not improvising. They were refining. And by January 2010, they were certain. Mahmoud's flight touched down at 14:30. He collected his bag, passed through customs, and climbed into a taxi. The Al-Bustan Rotana Hotel, a 5-star property in the heart of the city. He had stayed there before. The staff knew him as a merchant who preferred rooms without balconies, single entrance, windows that did not open. The precautions of a man who understood that comfort could become vulnerability. What he did not understand was that his precautions had already been mapped. The taxi pulled away from the airport. Somewhere in the terminal, a woman in sunglasses watched it go. Near the baggage carousel, a man folded his newspaper and reached for his phone. In a parking structure across the road, an encrypted message was already transmitting to a number routed through Vienna. By the time Mahmoud reached the hotel, 11 operatives were already positioned across the city. Some waited in lobbies, nursing coffees that had long gone cold. Others sat in rental cars. A few wandered through shopping malls, indistinguishable from the tourists and expatriates who filled every public space. They watched, they waited. Mahmoud checked into room 230 at 15:20. He asked for a room on a lower floor. Single entrance, no balcony. The receptionist accommodated him. Before going upstairs, he deposited cash and documents in the hotel safe, protecting assets he would never retrieve. Then he stepped into the elevator. 2 men in tennis whites stepped in beside him. They stood close enough to note the floor button he pressed, close enough to see the room number when he walked down the corridor and opened his door. He did not react to their presence. Tennis players were common in luxury hotels. He had no reason to suspect them. For the next hour, those 2 men paced the second-floor corridor. One stood near the elevator bank, making calls on what appeared to be a mobile phone. The other walked back and forth, pausing occasionally to check his watch. They were mapping. Guard schedules, guest movements, the location of room 237, directly across from Mahmoud's door. At 15:47, a woman checked into a different hotel several miles away. Investigators believe this was where the final briefing occurred. The assassination squad gathered in a conference room. They reviewed the plan one last time, synchronized their movements, confirmed contingencies. Then they scattered. By 1614, operatives were converging on the Rotana from multiple directions. The field commander arrived at 1623. He checked into room 237 using a key obtained through the business center of a nearby property. He handed the key to another operative waiting in the lobby. Then he placed a suitcase beside that operative, turned, and walked out of the hotel. He was airborne before Mahmoud stopped breathing. This is the level of detail most public accounts never reach. That's the layer this channel focuses on. At 1832, 4 men entered the hotel carrying a black backpack and a black and white duffel bag. 2 wore baseball caps. 2 wore casual shirts. Security cameras captured them crossing the lobby without urgency and ascending to the second floor. They entered room 237, where operatives had been waiting since late afternoon. The room faced Mahmoud's door. Through the wall, they could hear movement in the corridor. They could track when he left and returned. They waited. Mahmoud had left the hotel briefly at 1623. Some accounts suggest he met with contacts at a nearby mall, an Iranian official, a banker. The details remain unclear. What is certain is that he returned at 2024, carrying a small shopping bag, walking with the unhurried gait of a man who believed he had time. Security footage shows him walking past a woman in the corridor. She was smiling, talking on her phone, her body angled so her face was partially obscured. She appeared to notice nothing. He appeared to suspect nothing. He swiped his keycard. The lock clicked green. He stepped inside. The woman's smile did not change. At 2000 hours, the hotel's electronic lock system logged an anomaly. Someone was attempting to reprogram the door to room 230. The device they used was sophisticated, likely rehearsed on identical locks during training. It was designed to grant access without disabling Mahmoud's own key, a silent entry that would leave no trace of forced intrusion. The first attempt failed. At that moment, an elevator opened and a hotel guest stepped into the corridor. An operative intercepted the guest, engaging him in casual conversation, asking for directions, complimenting the hotel. Anything to hold attention while the team either retreated or completed their entry. The surveillance cameras did not capture the door opening. Their angles did not cover that precise spot. But what happened next is clear from forensic evidence. Inside room 230, Mahmoud was attacked within seconds of the door closing behind him. The first weapon was chemical. Succinylcholine chloride, a fast-acting muscle relaxant, injected into his right hip. The drug causes paralysis within 60 seconds. The victim remains conscious, aware, unable to move or scream, unable to do anything but experience what is happening to them. Mahmoud would have felt his legs give way first, then his arms, then the muscles in his chest that allowed him to breathe. The team also used a stun gun. Burn marks were found on Mahmoud's chest, behind his ear, on his inner thigh. The shocks were calibrated to mimic cardiac arrest, a death that would appear natural if no one looked closely. But the final method was suffocation, a pillow stained with blood, broken slats beneath the mattress, damage to the headboard. Mahmoud fought. In silence, paralyzed but not unconscious, he resisted his killers until resistance was no longer possible. The man who had spent 20 years making himself invisible died in a room where no one could see him. The execution took 20 minutes. 20 minutes in a room where no sound escaped. At 20:46, the first two operatives exited the hotel carrying the duffel bag. Inside it, investigators believe, were the instruments of the killing. One operative left behind a latex glove. A mistake. Or perhaps not. Perhaps they were already calculating that by the time anyone found it, they would be thousands of miles away. At 20:47, the woman who had been smiling in the corridor walked out, still on her phone. At 20:51, another operative followed. At 20:52, the lookouts stationed in the lobby since early evening departed. They scattered into the Dubai night. Taxis to the airport. Flights to Europe, Africa, Asia. Different terminals, different airlines, different continents. Within 12 hours, every operative had left the country. Within 24, most were already operating under new identities. Mahmoud lay dead in his locked room. The door was chained from inside. A medicine bottle had been placed on the nightstand. The scene was staged to suggest a man who had died in his sleep routine. Unremarkable, the kind of death that happens, his wife called that night. The phone rang, and rang in a room where no one would ever answer it again. Hamas headquarters in Damascus grew concerned when he failed to report in, but the hotel staff saw no reason to check. Checkout was not until the following afternoon. It was only when he missed that deadline by more than an hour that a maid was sent upstairs. She knocked. No answer. She used her key. The chain caught. Through the gap, she saw a man on a bed who was not sleeping. Dubai Police Chief Dahi Khalfan Tamim had spent years convincing the government to install one of the most extensive closed-circuit television networks in the world. American-made cameras covered every major intersection, every hotel lobby, every airport terminal. The system was designed to deter crime. It would document something far more sophisticated. When Tamim learned of the death, he initially assumed nothing unusual, a businessman with a weak heart. Unfortunate but ordinary. Then someone suggested reviewing the security footage. What emerged over the following days was unprecedented. 648 hours of video showing 27 individuals moving through airports, hotels, malls, and streets in patterns that could only be coordination. Operatives changing disguises in restrooms, making calls on encrypted phones, trailing Mahmoud through lobbies and corridors, gathering in conference rooms, exiting the country in waves. For the first time, the world could watch a professional assassination unfold in forensic detail. Tamim was furious. The operation had occurred minutes from his own office. Under his security apparatus, on his watch, he ordered his investigators to identify every face in the footage. He demanded arrests. He called for the prosecution of the Israeli Prime Minister himself. The statements made headlines. They carried no legal weight. But the investigation did produce something damaging: the passports. 11 operatives had traveled on European documents, 6 British, 3 Irish, 1 French, 1 German. Each passport was meticulously forged, but the identities were not invented. They belonged to real people, dual nationals living in Israel, Holocaust survivors' descendants. Citizens who had no knowledge their identities had been stolen and used to cross borders for an assassination. One passport belonged to a man who had served as a soldier in the 1973 war, another to a woman who had never left Israel in 30 years. The revelation sparked outrage across capitals that had quietly tolerated Israeli operations for decades. Britain expelled an Israeli diplomat. Ireland summoned the ambassador. France lodged formal protests. The scandal demonstrated that even allies would not tolerate their citizens being used as cover for assassinations. The relationships that had allowed Israeli operations to proceed quietly were suddenly, publicly, strained. Israel maintained its standard policy: neither confirm nor deny. Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman suggested journalists had been watching too many films, but within intelligence circles, the message was clear. The operation had succeeded tactically and failed strategically. Mahmoud was dead. Hamas had lost a logistics coordinator. Iranian supply lines were disrupted. But Mossad's methods had been exposed in a way that could not be undone. The cameras had captured everything. The operatives vanished into the networks that had created them. Reassigned to desk duty, perhaps, while their faces slowly faded from public memory. Then redeployed under new names to new cities for new operations. Mahmoud's body was returned to Damascus and buried in Yarmouk. Thousands attended. Hamas declared him a martyr. Flags were lowered in Gaza. Iran found new intermediaries. The weapons kept flowing through new channels. The violence continued its cycles. What Dubai revealed was not the existence of targeted killing. Everyone knew that existed. What it revealed was the architecture, the months of preparation, the stolen identities, the electronic lock manipulation, the paralytic drugs and staged scenes, the coordination of 27 people across multiple countries to end one life in one room in one city. It showed that modern states can project lethal force anywhere on the planet with surgical precision. And it showed that in an age of ubiquitous surveillance, even the most sophisticated operations leave shadows. Because once you see how this was done, the operation itself stops being the important part. The cameras stopped recording. The hotel resumed normal service. Room 230 was cleaned, sanitized, and rented again to guests who would never know what had happened there. Somewhere, the people who planned the operation began reviewing what went wrong. The exposed passports, the biometric data collected at the airport, the retinal scans that would remain in international databases forever. They refined their methods, prepared for the next red page that would need execution. And somewhere, in corridors that never appear on any map, signatures replaced triggers. Authorizations were stamped. New files were opened. The ghosts learned to move differently. But they did not stop moving